Jon Anik and Kenny Florian podcast. Jon Anik and Kenny Florian.
I love them. I can't get enough of them.
Let's hear that Boston next.
Big jab there from Duffy, and Frank Mir is hurt now. Down goes Duffy on call. Frank Mir does it again. Rock'em sock'em robots here. Oh my goodness. Hyperbole.
There are a couple of absolutely self-involved bullshit artists.
Here are your hosts, Jon Anik and Kenny Florian.
Next shot, bang.
I mean, whose idea was this? Chael Sonnen's in the room next door. Sorry, Chael. 2:44 a.m. Eastern. It is 12:44 here in Salt Lake City, Utah. Great to have everybody with us for our live pay-per-view recap of UFC 307. It is episode 517 of the Anik Florian podcast. Ken Flo, burning it at all ends. I'm fired up. I was in a much better mood 15 minutes ago, if you really want to know, when I returned to my dressing room and found that all my shit was stolen, including my brand new Jordans. Yeah, jeans, Gucci belt, Jordans gone. Here we are. None of that stuff is irreplaceable. But, yeah, I mean, I was high-stepping about 20 minutes ago. So excited to talk to you about Poeton, and then all my shit got stolen in Salt Lake City. But, dude,
my God.
How are you doing coming up on 3 a.m. there in Charlotte, North Carolina?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. It's great to see you. The Merab Dwalishvili of MMA commentary over here, Jon Anik, absolute beast. He's tireless. Dude, what a night, man. Amazing night. I could see why you still have a little bit of energy left. I'm sorry that happened to you.
That's okay.
We need to track them down and take care of them.
So did you take a nap today, knowing that you were going to be up for this exercise? So what time did you nap from?
I took a nap, let's see, from 3:30 to about 6.
All right, good. So you should be in pretty good shape. So we're going to try
Yeah.
to present to you folks a power hour. We'll see how my Wi-Fi holds up, but we appreciate everybody joining us live. And I know for a lot of people in Australia or other parts of the world, right, who make tremendous sacrifices to ingest this UFC content all the time. Hopefully this is happening at a good hour, and maybe this is something that is of appeal to you moving forward, and maybe something that we consider, because as Ken Flo knows, dude, you think I just hit the pillow and fall asleep after these things?
Right.
You know?
Right.
But I am getting increasingly more starstruck and not less when I am around Poeton Alex Pereira. Bro, you're a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but you're also a striker. You're basically a lifelong martial artist. So what is it about this guy, as he defends his belt now for the third time in 175 days, that has guys like Joe Rogan speaking in superlatives that they've never uttered before?
I don't get starstruck. I'm around someone. I don't really see it. I'm like, okay, no big deal. When I see Pereira, though, he's different. He is a star. That's a dude that I get chills when he walks out to fight. It's just a completely different thing. There's no question about it. I tweeted about it. That guy has an aura about him just when he's walking around, and the whole look. And it's not a look as him putting on anything other than being who he is. This dude is built to fight. He's built to perform. He is a promoter's dream. Wow.
There is so much to discuss here, and certainly it feels as though we could spend a full 30 minutes on this main event. So a lot to get into tonight as we recap the piss out of UFC 307. Headlines brought to you by Cuervo. Now's a good time to enjoy the tequila that invented tequila. And you can't get a double here in Salt Lake City, Utah, but it might have been some good forethought by me to actually have something to drink that isn't life water right now after getting off a 9-hour broadcast, 8 hours on the air, and then the post-fight show as well. But Ken Flo, Alex Pereira, still the UFC's light heavyweight champion, had to face some adversity, had to dig deep. However trite that sounds, he was down 2-1 on all three judges' scorecards. I know some people out there had Alex Pereira up 3-0, right? He was not incompetitive by any standard in those first 3 rounds. But this is incredible what this man has accomplished in 2024. That says nothing of what he has done prior. But as far as this fight is concerned itself, your thoughts on Alex Pereira, Khalil Roundtree Jr.'s heart in defeat, and everything else?
You could sum it up with one word, and that word is brilliant. I think that I love that little tidbit about Joe Rogan talking to Mark Goddard about the sound of the strikes of Alex Pineda, right? But, the power's there. That is clear. His durability, all that stuff. But again, this is an extremely intelligent striker, John. The way that he systematically broke him down, from the calf kicks to the body shots. After round 2, Khalil just was not the same guy physically, wasn't able to blitz in the same manner. That lead leg was compromised, and Pineda just started to take over. He understood the range. He realized his left hook was largely taken away from him. He said, no problem, I have other weapons, and then proceeded to use those weapons in devastating fashion. Pineda is a brilliant striker, man. Just amazing what he can do out there and how he can adapt and adjust to whoever he is facing, because Khalil was an inspired fighter out there. He was courageous. He was determined, just still didn't have enough against the great Alex Pineda.
And recently, some of you probably heard the last style bender, the great Israel Adesanya, say, I'm good, man. I got to win over him. Last time
Right.
out, just going to watch him from afar. And Izzy is a guy ubiquitously regarded as one of the top 5 strikers in UFC history. And this man, right, Alex Poatan Pineda, just continuing to create this legacy that has guys like Chael Sonnen in the room next door suggesting that he's already the greatest of all time. Now, we are not going to have that conversation tonight. But, Kenny, there are a lot of different layers to this, right? We've talked about the anti-grappling, the elite striking that gets referenced every other minute. But the work ethic, the working constantly. You haven't been there in Danbury, Connecticut, watching his every move, but stamina is a weapon for this guy. And even though he hasn't faced that truly elite wrestler, Daniel Cormier doesn't exist at light heavyweight right now. So,
right.
This guy's really putting in the right work. Glover Teixeira, Plinio Cruz, everybody else, Fernelli Feliz, on it goes, man. But they're doing work the right way. And I think that work, the cardiovascular base, the stamina, these are big parts of it as well.
Dude, there's no question about it. It's almost a concern in some ways, just because every time I see him, no matter where he's at, he's sparring someone, and he's usually like some heavyweight boxer or some, highly regarded kickboxer from wherever the heck it is. So he's always sparring these huge dudes. And again, this is a big component to why he is who he is. I think over time, he'll actually probably need to dial that down a little bit because he is staying so active as a fighter. But there's no question about it. This guy is working overtime. He fully understands he only has a certain window to be able to maximize what he's bringing to the UFC's octagon. And he's putting the work in, man. This guy is disciplined. Every time I see him, he shows a new wrinkle to his game. The improvements that he's shown from, the first fight that we did for the rewind for the UFC to where he's at now, dude, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. This is a true martial artist, but he's also a fighter, man, all the way down to the heart.
There are so many different directions in which we can go when it comes to assessing this athlete. UFC 303 this summer, right? He saves the day. Second biggest card of the year to UFC 300, which, by the way, he headlined as well. Steps in for Conor McGregor, so to speak, at UFC 303. He's in Australia when he gets the call to fight Yuri Prochazka, right? Now, if he had gotten the call to fight a southpaw like Khalil Roundtree Jr. with a couple of weeks to spare, he's not taking that fight necessarily, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of method to the madness of Alex Pineda, right? They felt like they could beat Yuri Prochazka in that setting, right? But this Roundtree Jr. challenge, Kenny, the undeniable power, obviously, but the speed advantage, right? And he fought a good fight, well coached by John Wood. John Wood was well within his right to suggest that his athlete could do this. What were your thoughts on the way Pineda sort of handled some of what Roundtree Jr. brings to the table that maybe he hadn't necessarily seen in a UFC octagon before?
Yeah, listen, and to your point earlier about, the decisions he's making and the fights he's taking, a big credit goes to the people that he keeps around him. He's got a lot of MMA experience around him between Plinio Cruz and Glover Teixeira. But anyways, and again, this is a very intelligent man, in my opinion. I think that's underestimated. But the way that he was able to adjust the range and deal with the blitz and understand and trust the process of going, he's going to slow down. And then after round 1 being like, I think he's going to slow down. Let me continue taking out that lead leg. And sure enough, It took a little bit, but by round 3, Khalil was not able to blitz in the same manner that he was before, and he wasn't able to reach him and touch him with the same combinations he was landing before. So I think it was, the dividends paying off with the body shots, with the calf kicks, of course, that lead leg of Khalil, and him adjusting the range, the usage of his jab, John, the use of that cross was something to behold, man. And then finally adding in the sprinkling in of those body shots, which ultimately got him the finish, was just gorgeous. The only knock, if I'm going to look at something and be like, this is what I would have liked to seen him do, I would have liked to see him go to the body with his punches a little bit early. But other than that, dude, this was a masterclass, really. Just amazing.
It's amazing to me, as maybe a basketball player that didn't always rise to the occasion, right? To see a guy like Alex Pereira in this setting, not just talk about the experience advantage he has over Khalil Roundtree Jr., but to just be cold as ice. Ice water in the fucking veins out there, right? Doesn't even blink when he's I can't relate to all of you who are just so clutch. I know that's a word that a lot of people don't even like in professional sports, but the guy is just, it's like a sparring session. It's like, all right, here we go again. I'm going to fight the perfect fight and defend the title again.
Dude, so you'll know way better than I. And I was talking to Cody a little bit before the show. Is there any other, does the UFC stay on a fighter that long for other main events? For whatever reason, time stops whenever Pereira's there, and they zoom in on his eyes and they zoom in on his opponent's eyes, and it seems like they're staying there forever. And I love every damn second of it. I don't know do they do that for every main event, or am I just crazy, or is it just the Pereira effect?
Yeah, just the Pereira effect.
Okay, all right. Because it's
best walkout in combat sports history, I think.
Oh my
according
God.
to Joe Rogan, certainly at present. But no, so they did it for Yuri Prochazka, and it was the craziest thing, right? And neither one of them blinked, right? But tonight they're doing it, and my initial inner monologue, believe it or not, is like, are we really doing this again? Like, are we going to do this thing again? Are we going to elongate this thing again? And I looked over at Dana White, and I almost felt as though maybe he had the same sentiment, as if to say, are we doing this again?
Yeah.
But hey, if Kenny Florian, 3-time UFC title challenger, says, give me more of that, then fine.
Listen, I'm not a big pageantry guy, but whatever it is, Pereira, dude, I love it. It is unfreaking believable because he is believable. His eyes go black. I've never seen in other dudes' fighters' eyes like Pereira's. The way, just the stone cold look, the lack of blinking. He's a menace, dude.
I mean, if you're a mixed martial arts fan looking for a new tattoo, I mean, do you not go get that fucking statue emoji on your forehead like tonight? I mean, I'm sure there's some parlors still open 24/7 in Vegas. I'm afraid to move on to something that I shouldn't, because I think there's so much to unpack when it comes to this fight. But could we at least give a little flower treatment to Khalil Roundtree Jr., just for the heart, the approach,
oh my gosh,
the overall sort of willingness to commit to the martial arts lifestyle, to even position himself for this opportunity when he lost to Marcin Prachnio with respect a few years ago, to have dropped his third fight in his last 4. And nobody could have foreseen this.
I agree, man. Listen, Khalil, this is one of those fights, and you hear people say this, all the time, the cliche of he actually won this one, but he really did. He first of all, yes, he's going to learn a ton from this, but he proved to so many people, myself included, of what he's capable of. He came out inspired. He came out, despite maybe having a little bit of doubt in his head, because I think that was present right before the fight a little bit, I think, in his eyes. I mean, anybody would if you're looking at Pereira across from the cage, but, especially given the fact that he was a striker. But, dude, he performed amazingly well. There's no one else that I think has been that successful on the feet against Pereira at 205 pounds, man.
Right.
So he should be applauded. He's a stud. He's also shows a lot of class after the fight every single time.
Oh, he's the man.
The dude's amazing. Yeah.
And this time around, he wasn't in person for our fighter meeting, but you can be sure 5 minutes early on the phone, more than willing to give up his time, no matter how treacherous a weight cut. So in terms of Khalil Roundtree Jr. against the rest of this division, and then we'll circle back to Poatan, wicked competitive, right? He got the Jamal Hill fight at UFC 303. That went away, of course, because of the tainted supplement or whatever it was. But I would imagine, based upon what you saw tonight, with a rebuild, some sutures, you could check in with Irene Aldana too. She'll make you feel better. But how do you think you would handicap him right now against guys like Alexander Rakic, Magomed Ankalaev, Jamal Hill, and the other guys that likely are going to show up in his bracket next?
So long as he keeps that same attitude, man, and he continues with all that hard work, I would have him as a favorite against all of those guys. It would have to take, some kind of a grappler to really beat him at this point, or for me to kind of have Khalil as the underdog, because for him to have that amount of success against Pereira, that's a confidence builder. And I think he's going to learn a lot of what Pereira did to him. And yeah, I'm excited for his future, man. I don't know how much longer he wants to stick around, but Jamal Hill, had a little words. I think he was making a gesture, maybe that he was yawning or something like that. I don't know exactly what it was. I couldn't, but Jamal Hill has to be careful to not get too overconfident, because he may face a guy like Khalil and find himself, on the canvas sleeping again, because I think Khalil's that dangerous. And for Jamal Hill, I think he should go back to, listen, what made Jamal Hill good was his work ethic and his humility. And I think he needs to go back to that. But anyways, this is more about Khalil. So let's go back to that.
So I guess I'm being told Jamal Hill was octagon side. He was in the building, pantomiming, yawning or something after the fight. Yeah. Okay. So,
yeah,
all right.
I don't know if he was covering his
face.
Yeah,
that's very well a fight that could get rebooked in short order. So when Alex Pereira lost his middleweight title to Israel Adesanya, his next fight, I believe, was against Jan Blachowicz at UFC 291 in Salt Lake City, his light heavyweight debut. Mm-hmm. So they couldn't, or maybe weren't going to necessarily give him an immediate championship opportunity at 205. But let us not forget, right, that split decision against Jan Blachowicz. If that flips, right, who knows? And it's just incredible to think that this guy has now reeled off 4 straight UFC light heavyweight championship wins. As we spin it forward, anything else actually on the fight itself that you want to, the finishing sequence, bro, with the body shots, right? It's almost like everything's slowing down for him in real time. And right. I can just say as a commentator in that moment, it's an out of body experience.
He's a killer. I could see why, man. Again, this is a promoter's dream. It's why he has stayed so busy. He deserves every penny that he's getting and more. And I think for him, I hope he takes a little bit of time off, man. Enjoy, relax, let the body recover a little bit. But he probably won't. He'll just go right back to training, dude. And again, I have to admit, I want to see him as soon as possible.
That's interesting. I think January would probably be too soon. I actually wouldn't mind seeing him maybe idle until March, but we'll see what happens.
Right.
You certainly have to have the business in 3 weeks between Alexander Rakic and Magomed Ankalaev, and you sort of made the segue for me. So I don't really need to go too deep into the heavyweight conversation unless you do. I do not believe that Alex Pereira is going to fight Tom Aspinall. I do believe there are heavyweight matchups for Alex Pereira that are very intriguing. I actually think the John Jones matchup is better for him than Tom Aspinall. But I think middleweight is more likely. And he said to Joe Rogan after the fact that his friend Sean Strickland presumably is going to fight Dricus du Plessis. And if you read into what Sean Strickland is saying, maybe that fight would happen in Australia. You have the Robert Whittaker business with Khamzat Chimaev as well at middleweight. So it does not appear that Alex Pereira's next fight is going to be at middleweight. But I think middleweight's more likely than heavyweight. It's going to be light heavyweight right now, Kenny. Ankalaev Rakic, UFC 308. Presumably, if Ankalaev emerges, then that would be the fight against Alex Pereira. What are your thoughts on those 3 divisions, Poatan, and, the world being his fucking goddamn oyster?
Yeah, seriously. It's like, how do you know he's a superstar? Yeah, when people are asking you about competing in 3 different divisions, come on.
For the belt in all 3.
Yeah. For the belt in all 3. Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, dude, he's obviously moving the needle. I think there's a lot of possibilities for him. if he's going to fight at 185, again, that's one of those I would love to see him take a lot of time off.
Yeah.
Just because, your preparation for the weight cut and all that stuff. Like, he's going to make it just because he's a savage.
100%.
But give the body some time to recover, please. Yeah. But I think we'll see him at 205. I think we'll see him at 205 most likely against Ankalaev. But Rakic, I'm sure, has something to say about that. He's a very dangerous knockout artist in his own right. And either of those, I think, are very intriguing in my book.
So our producer, Cody Merrow, just wrote something in the chat here. It's 3:03 a.m. where he lives in the great state of New Hampshire. I'm not sure that adjective is always used on the front end of New Hampshire, but he wrote Poatan versus Aspinall 225-pound title. And I don't know if you're trying to incite me. Have you met Tom Aspinall, bro?
He's not making 225.
Well, I mean, you talk about taking time off for Tommy Aspinall. You're going to have to just get on a treadmill. I mean, no. He can't make
Aspinall's the size of a polar bear, Cody. Okay?
He gets bigger every time I see him. I think his torso weighs 160. So, but for Alex Pineda, it's likely going to be light heavyweight. And we just had a conversation on the post show. And sometimes I don't like to repeat things that I say on pay-per-view because I think this audience immediately after the fact heard everything that I had to say. But Magomed Ankalaev, as Anthony Lionheart-Smith suggested, and I intimated, is not some chain takedown guy, right? There's not who's the best wrestler in the light heavyweight division or the guy who prioritizes offensive wrestling the most. So let us just for a second handicap Alex Pineda and Magomed Ankalaev, because I don't think Ankalaev's going out there and providing the Merab Dwalish-Willie type of challenge that Sean O'Malley had to deal with.
Right. Well, no, for sure. As far as that level of pace and pressure, absolutely. I agree. I don't think he's going to be that guy who's constantly looking for the takedown. He may try, but he may find himself very tired because I think Pineda knows how to stall the action on the ground. He knows how to get back to his feet. And Ankalaev is not really this kind of submission machine where he's super dangerous, on your limbs or on your neck or anything like that. So, yeah, I still think that that's going to be a very interesting fight to gauge exactly where Pineda's grappling or anti-grappling game is. And yeah, I mean, Ankalaev isn't that dude who's just constantly shooting on you and can do that for 25 minutes. He should if you're going to face someone like Pineda, but I don't think he's that guy.
Trying to find some stats here.
He's a good striker, though, as well.
Actually accurate. I'm trying to find career statistics for Magomed Ankalaev. Takedown accuracy, 31%. I'm not going to dive too deep in here. I just got off the air, but obviously if I had gone through the full regular preparation for the Anik and Florian podcast, I could have presented a few more numbers for you. But the point remains, in certain divisions, that real pain in the ass wrestler that's just going to make for a suffocating night at the office does not exist. So Alex Pineda, congratulations, man. Sounds trite to say it couldn't happen to a better dude, but the man remade his life at a time, made some critical decisions at key points in his life, seems a tremendous father to his two boys who seem to be developing a lot of martial arts chops in their own right. So just really happy for Poatan, for Plinio Cruz, for Glover Teixeira, as you're saying now. So Ken Flo actually used to just say Alex Pereira because he would Americanize it. But you are right. It's like it almost needs to be one or all. Like if it's Alex Pereira, it's got to be Glover Teixeira, right? And Rafael Deutsch Anjoish. Anyway, congrats to Alex and the entire team. And, as we New Englanders like to say, the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship belt remains in New England.
They hate us.
So the women's bantamweight championship fight tonight, Ken Flo, Raquel Pennington and Juliana Pena go the 25-minute distance. I thought it was a close fight. It seems as though there is a lot of fan and commentator uproar as to the scoring, but Juliana Pena becomes a two-time UFC women's bantamweight champion, spoils the first defense for Raquel Pennington. Seems like it came down to round one. I shouldn't say seems like it because it did, as far as the judges' scorecards were concerned. If memory serves, Juliana Pena did land a lot of significant strikes in that first round, but I thought Pennington won 4 and 5. Kenny, any thoughts on the co-main event?
Well, you know what? I picked Pena to win. I think Pena is a very interesting character. Pennington is way more quieter and all that stuff. However, as I was watching the fight and I went back and watched it again, I actually think that Pennington had a pretty good case for getting the win as well. And you're right. I think it did come down to round one. And if we're being consistent in how we're seeing these fights, I think that Pennington landed the more significant blow. She was a little bit more effective in my book when it came to the striking. Not to say Pena was not, but Pennington was more effective, which should have given her the win. Overall, super close fight. Don't necessarily have a problem with Pena winning. But yeah, Pennington had a pretty strong argument there, man.
Bro, I just got a text message, by the way. Shout out to the UFC, man. Looks like security has the person who stole my Jordans on camera. They're going to his house.
No way.
Get those Jordans back.
Let's go.
I want to shout out my colleague who's tracking this, but I'm going to protect him or her.
That's awesome.
So, so it's really interesting because these women, and I was happy to see them hug after the fact, but they really had a lot of disdain for one another. And I thought Raquel Pennington was going to sort of channel that emotion in the right way, but I did think she got lost there a little bit in rounds 2 and 3, and she got brought back by Tisha, who was Octagon's side, and her coaches after that third round, like, go get in a fight.
Right?
Like, go do what we trained to do. And on the other side for Juliana Pena, Kenny, I think there were factors. I don't know if the altitude was a factor. I don't know if ring rust from not competing since 2022 was a factor. But I think the knockdown could have been a factor as well as to why she finished the fight so unceremoniously. But I do think part of it, when you do lose the championship rounds and then you get your hand raised and you look surprised that you won, that's only going to sort of fuel whatever the fans are intimating.
Agreed. And again, when you're in a fight and you have one person that finished really strong, it wasn't just the 5th round, it was the 4th and 5th round. It says a lot. And again, her name's Rocky for a reason. And the way that she was able to come back yet again, I was not surprised by it. Pennington knows how to gather herself up and get right back to it.
Hey, Ken Flo.
I was really impressed, man.
I got to take this call, so keep talking for a second. This is UFC security call.
Go for it, man. Yeah, that's important. See, John's trying to get his Jordans back. That's important. But yeah, I think that for Pennington, she definitely had a strong case. She landed some really heavy shots. She was able to knock Pena down not once, at least twice. She showed improvements. Typically, Pennington is more of a grinder. She's not necessarily known for her striking power. And the fact that she was able to land those heavy shots and drop Pena showed improvements. Actually, to start the fight, I thought that both ladies showed improvement. Pena as well. I thought Pena's jab looked way better. I think where she started to mess up a little bit, I don't think she was respecting the power of Pennington in rounds 4 and 5. She started dropping her hands a little bit. Whether that was her being tired, as you were mentioning, John, or not, I'm not sure. But either way, Pennington was finding a lot of success late in the fight, and she definitely showed that she's improving as a power puncher for sure.
Thank you to Delta Center Arena Security and the UFC security team. They got my Jordans in hand and they're shipping them to Las Vegas. That's insane.
Hell yeah. That's
so awesome. Kayla Harrison, have you injected her name into this conversation yet?
I have not.
I mean, is she not a breath of fucking fresh air?
I love her.
Right? She's awesome. She really is.
Yeah.
And hopefully the great city of Boston, Massachusetts rubbed off on her in some of her formative years. But Kayla Harrison came in, second UFC appearance. Brian Petrie on our show picked Kayla Harrison by decision, -110. Good on him. Ketlin Vieira had a hugely damaging moment in round 2. I thought Ketlin handled herself very well all week, was meeting Kayla's energy at the press conference, coming out of her skin. But Kayla Harrison's all the rage, right? Even though there was a lot of back and forth and a lot of merit to this title fight, Kenny, Kayla Harrison's going to be the favorite to win the Women's Bantamweight Championship against Juliana Pena whenever that fight ends up going down. So what are your thoughts on the Bantamweight division now moving forward with Juliana Pena as champion and presumably Kayla Harrison, your former PFL colleague, being next?
Yeah, I think it's going to I think it's going to get very interesting, and I think in a lot of ways you could argue that Ketlen Vieira is a more difficult matchup stylistically for Kayla Harrison than say Pena is. Just because Pena's strengths lie where Kayla Harrison's strengths lie, and Harrison is a world class grappler. Pena's not too shabby herself, but not quite at the level of Harrison. Now, where Harrison had a little bit of trouble is on the feet. I think her kicks looked a little bit awkward, if I'm being honest. She seemed a little bit tired, or maybe she was kind of reserving energy in round 2 a little bit. But Ketlen certainly deserves some credit for fighting defensively, more defensively. Dean Thomas talked about that. So, but that's not a knock on Vieira. I think it was smart for her to try to avoid that grappling a little bit. And but in round 3, Harrison was able to get back into that clinch, take her down, and get back to work on the ground. So, the level is different in the UFC. Okay. And Ketlen is no slouch. She's tough.
Yeah.
She's good everywhere. But at the same time, we also saw how good Harrison is once she takes the fight to the ground. So I can't wait, man. I think Harrison as a champ or potential champ in the UFC, I think will bring a lot of good things for the women's division.
Both of these women so well coached. Andre Pederneiras and Ketlen Vieira have an amazing kinship and connection. And then just that American top team powerhouse, Anderson Franco and Mike Brown and Steve Mocco.
Yes.
And Caitlin Harrison just so coachable. And she's the opposite of gassed in every moment, seemingly, right? I haven't seen her tired at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious to see a fight against Juliana Pena. Anthony Smith suggested on the post-fight show that even though maybe he thought Raquel Pennington won the title fight, that he believes the Juliana Pena-Kayla Harrison fight is more appealing / competitive. I'm not sure if you agree on that.
I'm not sure it's competitive, but it's appealing because both those ladies, they have a lot of character, man. They have a lot of charisma. I would love to just hear those two go back and forth on the mic. They had some great moments at the press conference, and I think they can really build a very interesting fight because also people in the UFC are still trying to figure out who Kayla Harrison is, right? So I think it's very interesting, and I think that's a fight we will see in early 2025.
They could have pushed Kayla Harrison right into a title fight after she submitted Holly Holm the way she did at UFC 300. They made her pass this test, right? So you would submit to me that this fight between Ketlen Vieira and Kayla Harrison was competitive. Ketlen Vieira won a round on, I think, one judge's scorecard, if not two. Maybe it was just one. So, but you don't necessarily think Kayla Harrison, Juliana Pena is as competitive. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, right? But
sure, no.
I feel like you maybe are saying in some part, I don't know how you'd handicap Ketlen Vieira versus Juliana Pena, but it sounds like, I know styles make fights, but maybe you're saying that a Vieira-Harrison rematch might be more competitive than a Juliana Pena-Kayla Harrison fight, or are you not?
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that, Ketlen is a big, strong 135-pound female. Pena is not like built up like that. And I also don't think her striking is as developed as Ketlen Vieira. So I think Vieira had enough anti-grappling skills and she was dangerous enough on the feet, as was evidenced by that beautiful elbow that she threw, that she posed some problems for Harrison. I don't know if Pena possesses those same types of skills. And again, it doesn't matter. Pena's a very tough fighter. There's no question about it. She's a champ for a reason. Her second time doing so. However, I think just the way that they match up, I think it's a little bit more favorable to Harrison than the Vieira fight was. Yeah.
We'll see where Raquel Pennington goes from here. I think the tough thing for Raquel is that a lot of those matchups are tough, and she's been in a lot of close fights, even the split decision against Ketlen Vieira, right? And maybe that would be a fight that would come around again. Macy Chasson in a rematch. There's a lot of talent at 35 right now. I mean, the name I brought up, of course, Big Norman Dumont, factored prominently in any
dude, absolutely.
Right. But Juliana Pena is the champ, and she deserves her flowers, to be sure, to come back and fight as competitively as she did in rounds 2 and 3. Presented a lot of shining moments. I thought her boxing looked improved. And we'll see what she has, presumably, for Kayla Harrison. Any thoughts on Amanda Nunes? She did post something on X, but I don't really think that Amanda Nunes is going to come back imminently. But I think for Nunes, the Pena fight is not of any appeal.
Yeah, I don't think it is. It's possible that she comes back for Miss Harrison. Who knows? You had former teammates. I think that would be a big money fight, especially after, let's say, Harrison wins the belt. She defends once or twice, then maybe. But who knows? Nunes deserves to kind of ride off into the sunset. I think she's living a good life right now. I don't know how active she is as a fighter or how much she's training, but I would love to see her just retire and go off. She certainly deserves it. What an amazing career. But who knows? Maybe the Harrison fight brings a lot more money for her.
Well, that's the rub, right? You don't need to know how hard Amanda's training or not training, right? You need to know her net worth. And if her net worth is less than X million dollars, then the Kayla Harrison fight would be a monumental payday.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because Amanda Nunes' legacy is so entrenched that fight comes with so much inherent risk. Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. But we'll see what happens with Juliana Pena and Kayla Harrison. You just hope that they can keep the division spinning because I'm excited about the women's bantamweight division right now. But Raquel Pennington won the belt in January and took almost a year for the first title defense to happen. So hopefully Kayla Harrison gets her shot in short order. All right. Let us get to Jose Aldo and Mario Bautista, if we could. Featured bout in the bantamweight division goes to Mario Bautista by split decision. A lot of people seem up in arms about a lot of fucking things tonight. I thought it was a close fight. I did think the rightful winner won. I know there are a lot of layers to this fight. What did you make of these 15 minutes between the number 10 and 11th ranked bantamweights in the world, respectfully?
How dare you have an opinion on this, John? Listen, I think that I think it's valid. I think you have a valid opinion. I disagree with it. I thought that Aldo won. But again, we're talking about, it's a close fight. It's a close fight. There's no question about it. I thought that Aldo was more effective as a striker in round 3. I thought Bautista won round 1. I thought Aldo won round 2, perhaps the most convincing of the rounds. And Bautista did a great job of trying to get to the clinch and disrupting the rhythm of Aldo, right? So I thought it was a good game plan. But I thought that Aldo was a little bit more effective when it came down to it. But again, not a whole lot happened on the feet. You know what I mean? So I get it. It was Bautista who was the guy moving forward, looking for the takedowns. He wasn't doing much with it. And, we kind of go back to that question, what is considered effective grappling? Is it the control of Bautista or is it the anti-takedown game of Jose Aldo? So, I think when you look at where Aldo, and we've talked about this on the last show, where he's been susceptible, it's exactly what Bautista tried to do to him. So I thought it was a well-executed game plan either way.
Even at times, Andre Pederneiras was saying in the corner, I don't want you sort of stalling up against the fence. And I did think Aldo could have been more urgent in those situations. Yes. But you're right. It comes back to the conversation about effective grappling and effective aggression, even if you're going to go to that condition, right?
Right.
Certainly, I think a lot of the visuals for Mario Bautista were good. Perpetual offense, trying to do things. And I just think not necessarily disrupting the rhythm of Aldo, but presenting sort of just a bunch of shit in your face all the time that clock kind of gets away from you. But you're right, Kenny. Like there wasn't, it's tough. It's a close fight, man. It's a close fight.
And to your point, man, a lot of it has to do with gamesmanship, right? It's like, if you're tired, but you don't act like you're tired, then that looks more impressive. I'm not saying that was the case either way. I'm just giving an example of what the judges may or may not be looking for and what could influence their decision a certain way. If I look lethargic or tired as I'm moving around the cage, but I'm still out striking you, that still may not be a good look. So I think there were times where Aldo could have been more active, where he could have shown a little bit more, pizzazz or energy at times. Yeah. And, maybe he's going to be kicking himself after this, but it was like the same situation with the Merab fight, with all of that experience and as good as Aldo is, I think that for me, when I see him fight, I'm always wanted to see more. I'm seeing an Aldo that's a little bit slower than he was before. He uses his reaction time similar to how Anderson Silva used to back in the day for defensive purposes.
Yeah.
And it's not as quick, so he's getting hit with a little bit more shots. So anyways, Aldo's still a stud. I thought he won. It was super close. Bautista's a stud as well. And I think that's going to be another one where Aldo, when he goes back and watches that, whether he thought he won or lost, he's going to be kind of kicking himself a little bit, hoping that, or wishing that he did a little bit more.
Great analysis. Honestly, I love the Anderson Silva defensive comparison, but you're right. I do believe Jose Aldo maybe has lost a little bit of that speed, right?
Yeah.
When I try to suggest to Dominic Cruz that he's a skosh slower than he used to be, he wants to fucking kill me. But I'm watching Stephen Wonderboy Thompson tonight at 41 years of age. He is still just as fast. He's like getting faster, I think, maybe, even though he lost the fight. We'll get to that in a little bit. So I'm happy for Mario Bautista. I'm happy for the MMA Lab. They do so many things the right way. And you know how much I love Jose Aldo. Of course, I get starstruck around the guy. I can barely even speak in front of him. But I would have felt really disappointed if Mario Bautista's 6-fight winning streak went by the boards tonight, because I don't know, man. I just didn't think Jose Aldo got enough done in the fight, even if some of Bautista's work appeared to be stalling to some people. And it looked like maybe Conor McGregor, Cody sent it to me, tweeted that Bautista acknowledged the stalling even in his post-fight interview with Joe Rogan. My head's spinning right now. I'm getting traffic. I didn't necessarily pick up on that. But Bautista 0 for 10 on his takedowns against Jose Aldo. But again, chewing up clock as you're trying to wrestle and preventing Jose from striking.
Right.
The middleweight main card opener, Kenny, between Kevin Holland and Roman Dolidze ended unceremoniously with a rib injury. I just said on the post-fight show, after a DraftKings shoot a few years ago, Daniel Cormier came up behind me and he picked me up like by my chest and tore my rib cartilage. And I felt it for the next 8 months. So respect to Kevin Holland. I feel like it's a tough navigation for the coach, Bob Perez, in how to navigate that situation, in trying to support your athlete, but also not make him make the decision. So what'd you have for us on that?
That pudgy guy's pretty damn strong, huh? That Daniel Cormier. I remember locking up with him, and I could not believe how weak and meager I felt locking up with that dude. Anyways, rib injuries suck, okay? I've had it many times. The rib cartilage thing, my brother Keith just getting over broken ribs from a couple months ago. And it's brutal, man. It is extremely painful. And the problem is that it's linked to everything. So wherever you go, any movement you make, you're in trouble. So I think in the end, it was the right move to make. Dolidze obviously had Holland in a lot of trouble. Whether that, I think it happened right after the rib injury. So, I don't think it would have gone any better for him. So I think it was the right call. Unfortunate there for Kevin Holland, who was looking great on the feet there.
And Roman Dolidze just continuing to get it done in his UFC career by any means necessary. But I do believe if like Kevin Holland's shoulder popped out, he'd be trying to put that thing back in and fight. The rib is just a unique thing and nothing to mess with nor fight through. New Mansa, Joaquin Buckley, Ken Flo. What else can be said about this guy? And I think my biggest takeaway is that down 2-0, hey man, got to go for it. And he produces a $50,000 bonus, his 5th straight welterweight win since moving back to this division, and does to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson concussively what I haven't seen really anybody do to him.
Well, yeah. I mean, Buckley he has a gift, man. His physicality is extremely impressive. And, what he lacked in technique, he made up for it with his power. And man, Wonder Boy was having quite the night. He was looking phenomenal. He was turning back the clock. And like you said, he looked fast as hell out there. Countering was just on point. His takedown defense was looking pretty solid. He was getting back to his feet really well. And that could be extremely frustrating for a guy who doesn't have that same level of experience as Wonder Boy. It didn't matter. This was a more mature Buckley who kept it together, who kept pressing, and finally landed that big shot. Wonder Boy was not in a very good defensive position, which was rare for him. But Buckley kept poking and landed a big, big shot, man.
So Joaquin Buckley was, I'll stop short of saying roundly criticized, but a lot of people questioned the lack of maybe a head coach, even though he has some standards and some old reliables in his corner, right? But the impetus for him staying home in St. Louis, Missouri is to be around his kids and his family, right? And it seems though Thompson and focused and stayed in. You know, like when Oddshark recently asked me to come up with like an NFL football team of UFC players, Joaquin Buckley was my running back. Like, there's something undeniable about the athleticism, and the Impa Kasanganai maybe is the most spectacular knockout in UFC history. And like tonight, man, just insane to flatline Wonder Boy like that. So
for sure,
it's gonna be interesting to see him moving forward. I mean,
what do we think
about? What do we think about Joaquin Buckley? I like the Kamaru Usman call out. I mean, what do you think? What's the ceiling, Ken Flo? Talk to me.
I think it was a huge win. And I think this is going to be a big confidence builder for him as well. I think it's also going to be a good thing for him to look at and go, okay, technically, what do I need to do when I do complete these takedowns to get better control on the ground? What do I need to do to remove frames and to kind of steer my guy away from the cage? And once he starts working on that, whether it means he's got to go somewhere else for the time being for a quick camp as far as wrestling or jiu-jitsu, or bringing guys in for him, now he's going to get the big names. Now he's got to step up. And I think that if he's able to get better as technically, I think he could pose a lot of problems for a lot of people, man. And not a whole lot of guys are able to do that against someone like Wonder Boy.
He actually said he wanted to go to Charlotte, North Carolina and stay at your house for like a week and help with your kids. I told him your back was bad, so that was not going to happen. But I'm just really excited for New Mansa, because I think a lot of people in the public eye are a little bit misunderstood, and certainly I can relate to a forgettable utterance or two in my career, right? Sure. I mean, he was definitely run through it for that wayward Conor McGregor call out that none of us thought was the right way to maximize the mic time. But I'm interested to see Joaquin Buckley, and I just think he has the chance to present a lot of different problems for a lot of different people. So a few other things I'd like to get to on UFC 307, and thanks everybody for joining us at whatever hour. It is 1:30 a.m. here in Salt Lake City. Ken Flo burning it at all ends in North Carolina, 3:30 a.m. where you are. And by the way, our hearts go out to everybody who has dealt with those awful Mother Nature circumstances in North Carolina. Pretty far from you, Kenny, but my gosh, the horror, huh?
Yeah, a couple hours away, man. But, a lot of these mountain towns have been destroyed. Literally, they're going to have to resurvey these towns, John, where roads and mountains of where they used to be is completely changed. Like backyards that have been collapsed. There are people that are going to be dealing with this for months, man. And just, the stories I've heard, John, it's horrible. It's really, really sad. A lot of people lost their lives. A lot of people's, lives are never going to be the same, even if they did survive it. And, we've been doing everything possible to try to get a lot of supplies up to them and doing whatever we can to help. And I wish I could do more, but man, it's been a crazy week.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Sometimes you get sort of caught up in this work bubble and you feel like nothing matters more than a UFC live event, and then you see everything that's going on. It's absolutely horrifying, but our hearts go out to those people, to be sure. So a few other things I want to get to. We will have another episode later this week. We will give you our predictions and a preview of UFC Fight Night Royval versus Tyra flyweight main event coming up, the Apex here Saturday night. But a lot of different storylines here just to sort of close the book on 307. So Carla Esparza, right? And oftentimes I've wondered, and yeah, I guess the UFC Hall of Fame right now maybe has a one-man voting body that is Dana White, and who knows what type of, feedback he lets in. But sometimes I've wondered aloud, like, when does the Hall of Fame come calling for Rafael dos Anjos? When does the Hall of Fame come calling for Carla Esparza? Mm-hmm. Thug Rose Namajunas is getting in pretty quickly after she retires, right? But Carla beat her twice, beat everybody else, right? What do you think this moment, forgetting the Hall of Fame for a second, does for Carla Esparza going off into retirement? A fighter who dealt with criticism and boos even after winning championship fights, to be able to go out like this with a crowd showering her with adulation after a loss. I feel like this night probably felt better than some of her wins.
Right. Well, listen, Esparza has been one of those competitors that has been very quiet in her approach. She's been one of the hardest workers out there. She has been extremely consistent in her approach. You're talking about a former champion in the UFC. And, you know, her style is one that, you know, okay, maybe people aren't, you know, buying pay-per-views to see her fight or her style, but at the end of the day, as a competitor, why you should admire her, whether you're an athlete or not, is she gets it done. She finds a way to win. She works her ass off. She's never disrespectful. She's always classy in her approach. And even in a fight that she potentially won tonight, right? Just, you know, not a lot of people can keep it together like that. So she deserves big time kudos, man.
And she asked to take a picture with the broadcast team after the fighter meeting. God, I love you, Carla.
Awesome.
And I love Tisha Pennington, too, out of Fall River, Massachusetts. And by the way,
Yes.
given all the split decisions that have gone against her, you know, out of respect to Carla, maybe she didn't do this, but part of me wish she would unleash whatever masshole resides within and be like, you guys want to boo me? Fuck you. You know, right? Channel her ally Aquinta for a second, you know, because like, I mean, a lot of people thought she beat Tabitha Ricci, very competitive against Mackenzie Dern, losing a split decision. So double-digit strawweight wins now for Tisha Pennington, and I thought that this was a fight that she deserved to win. Congrats to Court McGee getting it done in the great state of Utah there, and crazy, man, right? Like, Court McGee, 17 of his 22 UFC fights, I think, had gone the distance, right? Usually a shoe-in for decision. He gets his neck fixed. It looks like a completely different fighter. He's 39, you know? Just nuts.
Dude.
He's got a whole new lease on life, man. Health is wealth.
I love it, man. Well, I think we called what his Ultimate Fighter finale win, right? Is that right?
Quite possible.
Is that right? Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And to see where, you know, all the fights that he's had in the UFC and to see him get the win by submission, that's really cool, man. Tim Means is no joke. And I feel like the guy's just been doing it forever, man. To have longevity in this sport is rare. To have longevity in the UFC is even rare. So props to him, man.
I'm not sure if you saw Ryan Spann win a bonus for his Super Manatine against Oven St. Preux, the great guillotine. So consistency is the buzzword for Ryan Spann. That hasn't really been his reality in the UFC, but he's still 33 years of age, had a wealth of UFC experience, a wealth of MMA experience even before getting to the UFC. I mean, he's every bit 6'5". He has chokes. He has power. He has a left hand from hell. He has a great head coach. I don't know if he can find that consistency, but and I know Oven St. Preux is 41, last fight of his contract. But, you know, there's a lot of us, including Anthony Smith, who beat Ryan Spann twice, that are really intrigued by this athlete, Ken Flo.
Yeah, no question about it. Well, Spann's a finisher, man. That's what I like about him, man. You never know what Ryan Spann is going to show up, man. The Ryan Spann that showed up tonight is a problem. And yes, OSP is 41, but OSP also has that capability of showing up on certain nights, and he's able to beat a lot of guys in that division himself. So for Spann to go out there and get this win, I thought was really impressive. There they are, the Jordans. Oh, those are
right, I
would have stole those. I would have stole those as well, to be fair.
So I got some people to thank real quick. So Steve, our great head of security with a finer bald head than me, and Deidre Cassidy, our production coordinator, who just delivered my Jordans back to my room. So somebody in Salt Lake City, Utah, goes into the male talent dressing room tonight. You're lucky you didn't steal something of Joe Rogan's, young man. Anyway, I shouldn't assume it was a man and not a woman, but those Jordans went home with this person, and then arena security knocked on their home door, presumably, and got my Jordans. What an incredible story. Thanks to everybody involved. All right, a few other things before we get on out of here. So Ihor Potieria and Cesar Almeida fought in a middleweight fight, and there was a referee that became the story in this fight. There were 4 eye pokes from Almeida. A point was not deducted, and you only get so many cracks at this, right? And Ihor Potieria is now 2-5 in the UFC, and like, come on, man. So I don't know what you have for us on that, but it's always interesting for me to watch the undressing of the individual by the commission and the other referees. And I'm sure they do it respectfully, but this referee who hasn't a clue takes his walk of shame down the octagon stairs, and Mike Beltran and Mark Goddard are there to greet him like, hey man, not going back in there tonight, are you?
I don't recall who it was that was in there. Like, it's just, I don't, it's a blur,
Dude.
But a lot of these referees, and the same goes in jiu-jitsu competitions, man, where they don't have the balls to make the right call, man. It's like they don't want to disrupt and they don't want to do, but the rules are the rules, man. And when you're seeing someone who's doing it, and let's make the assumption, I don't think Almeida was trying to do that, but once the hand is open, right, you warn them, you see the eye poke, it happens again, maybe two, okay, maybe two. But after that, man, you got to start taking points away. That's not cool. This is how you can change a fighter's life, right? Not only with the loss, but also with things like scratched retina or whatever it is, detached retina, a bunch of different things that can happen to the eye, which can affect the fighter for the rest of his life. So, yeah, I would have liked to seen at least 1 point taken away. And for referees that are just getting started and maybe not so comfortable in there, you got to take charge, man. That's your job.
It seems to me most of the elite referees, when it comes to an eye poke, will give the fighter the benefit of the doubt. I would much rather see a referee allow the action to continue with a groin strike than an eye poke, right? But Potier's reaction to me seemed to be one that would have afforded him the benefit of the doubt after that first eye poke. But I just wanted to bring that up, and not going to name the individual who refereed the fight. But, I'm an MMA fan, right? And obviously, my job puts me in a position where sometimes I can't be that MMA fan. But I did find myself sort of lacking some professionalism a little bit after the fight, trying to get this guy's, not on the air, but trying to get this guy's attention, to be like, hey, man, like, you got to let him grapple a little bit in the clinch, like at least 4 seconds, when the combat sambo pancration guy is trying to maybe take the world-class kickboxer to the fence for a few seconds strategically. Like, what are we doing?
Right. It's mixed.
Congratulations also to Yasmin Lucindo. She was born in 2002, Kenny, and she's going in there and beating Marina Rodriguez. They're number 6 in the world. I just am so amazed by some of these young athletes, right? Made her pro debut at 14, 15 years old because she saw her mom and her aunt getting beat up and wanted to defend them. I mean,
well, it was very prescient of you because you mentioned that just as the fight started, I believe. And it was that same level of maturity and composure that allowed her to win that fight. And it's a rarity in this sport, in a sport of a bunch of hotheads that are always trying to prove themselves for better or worse. A lot of times in a good way, where you're like, oh, they hit me. Now I have to go out there and hit them. It was smart. It was excellent execution, and she did it against a real veteran in Rodriguez, man. So I like Lucindo. I'm really curious to see what she brings to the table moving forward.
So about a month ago, Major League Baseball player, great third baseman, Anik and Florian podcast listener, Evan Longoria was wondering why you, who speaks Brazilian Portuguese, was not accenting the names. And now you're just doing it like gratuitously. I mean, Rodriguez, my goodness, whatever just came out of your mouth. All right, last thing I just want to say. So, and I don't really like having these conversations, but I kind of feel like we need a kicker on Alex Pereira before we get on out of here and let you go to bed at 3:42 a.m. So for me, like Mount Rushmore, I begin the conversation with John Jones, George St. Pierre, Demetrius Johnson, and then whoever you want to put in the 4th slot is fine. But Alex Poatan Pereira, Kenny, as Chael Sonnen said all week, was the least experienced fighter on this fight card. And to have any conversation about the all-time great fighters in MMA and not include his name now at this point in time seems like an incomplete conversation, no?
I mean, the guy's a beast. There's no question about that. One thing is for sure, I don't know if we're ever going to see a guy with that little amount of experience do what he's done in the UFC. It's there's no real comparison. And the variety of divisions and the manner that he's doing it with the level of fanfare that he's doing it. He's something different. And perhaps when it's all said and done, he will find himself at least in that top 5. So
yeah,
I just feel lucky that I get a chance to watch him fight and compete, man. And you should feel blessed you get a chance to call his fights and be around him, because I do think he's different.
In terms of just singular championship reigns, I would probably put what the last style bender did at middleweight up against this current light heavyweight run of Poatan. But Cody does ask, I think, an interesting question. Has Alex Pereira's legacy already surpassed Israel Adesanya, right? And if you are someone who glorifies these 2 division champions, and rightfully so, if you are in that class, right? It's just incredible. It really is incredible what this man has accomplished in a short amount of time. And we congratulate the entire team. The bonus winners, Alex Pereira and Khalil Roundtree Jr. I can't wait to give Khalil a hug for that fight of the night. And his wife, Mia Kang, just such a support system. I just love that family. Performance of the night bonuses, Joaquin Buckley and Ryan Spann. Thanks to our loyal Anik and Florian podcast listeners, viewers, for staying up late, watching the show tonight here on the DraftKings YouTube channel. Thanks to everybody who maybe is watching the show for the first time. Hopefully you will join us for our next episode Thursday. We will preview UFC Fight Night, Royval versus Tyra, and we will also circle back to UFC 307 with the great Ray Longo. Thanks to our executive producer, Cody Merrill. Thanks to Kenny Florian for staying up late. You're a good man. You know that?
You're a good man.
And thanks to everybody in Salt Lake City for making this just another incredible live event. We'll be back with you in about 72 hours. I'm going to try to shut this brain down, get some sleep. Until then, you'll later.